In the final months of World War I, deep in the tangled forests of northeastern France, a largely unknown American soldier from rural Tennessee found himself thrust into a battle that would alter the trajectory of his life and echo far beyond the war's muddy front lines. Drafted into a conflict that had already claimed millions, he arrived amid vast armies clashing across barbed wire and shell-scarred fields. On an overcast morning in October 1918, a small patrol was tasked with a seemingly routine objective: neutralize a hostile position hindering their unit's advancement. What followed defied the expectations of both allies and enemies. Amid relentless machine gun fire and the chaos of battle, command shifted in an instant, decisions were made under extreme pressure, and the fate of more than 100 combatants would hinge on the actions of one man whose story was only just beginning to unfold. Alvin Cullum York was born on December 13, 1887, in the remote community of Pall Mall, Tennessee. He was the third of 11 children in a family that relied almost entirely on subsistence farming and seasonal labor. Life in the Upper Cumberland region was defined by isolation, limited resources, and hard physical work. Formal education was not a priority or a luxury. York attended school irregularly and completed only about 9 months of schooling in total. Reading, writing, and arithmetic were learned at a basic level, while practical skills were developed through daily labor. From a young age, York became proficient with firearms, not for sport or conflict, but for hunting, which was essential to feeding his family. York's childhood ended abruptly in 1911 when his father died. As one of the older sons, York assumed major responsibility for supporting the household. He worked wherever labor was available, taking jobs as a farmhand, blacksmith's assistant, logger, and construction worker. These roles required long hours and physical endurance, often under difficult conditions. His income helped keep the family together, but the strain of responsibility and lack of opportunity shaped his early adulthood. During this period, York developed a reputation for heavy drinking, gambling, and frequent fighting. Community accounts described him as skilled with weapons and quick to assert himself, particularly during disputes fueled by alcohol. Between 1914 and 1915, York underwent a significant personal shift. After attending a revival meeting, he experienced what he later described as a religious conversion. He joined the Church of Christ in Christian Union, a small Protestant denomination that emphasized strict personal conduct, moral discipline, and obedience to biblical teachings. Following this conversion, York abandoned alcohol, gambling, and violence. He became active in church life, focusing on prayer, scripture study, and community responsibility. His interpretation of religious doctrine led him to adopt a firm opposition to killing, which he understood as incompatible with Christian teachings. This belief system became central to York's identity just as global events were escalating. When the United States entered World War I in 1917, York viewed military service as a moral conflict rather than a patriotic duty. His religious convictions caused him to question whether participation in war could be justified under any circumstances. These internal conflicts, rooted in his upbringing, labor-filled youth, and religious transformation, formed the foundation of the choices he would later face when drafted into the U.S. Army.
In 1917, following the United States entry into World War I, Alvin C. York, already in his late 20s, received his draft notice. His upbringing and recent religious conversion had instilled in him a strong moral framework that opposed killing, and he initially approached the draft with serious ethical reservations. York formally applied for conscientious objector status, citing his pacifist beliefs and his membership in the Church of Christ in Christian Union. However, the U.S. Selective Service System denied his application. Authorities required recognition of the Church as a formally established denomination with established doctrines on pacifism, which York's denomination did not meet. Despite his moral objections, York was legally obligated to serve. Upon induction, York was sent to Camp Gordon, Georgia, a training facility preparing soldiers for deployment to the European front. Training at Camp Gordon was physically demanding and rigorous, designed to turn civilians into soldiers capable of enduring trench warfare. York's prior experiences in rural Tennessee, hunting, logging, and manual labor, translated into exceptional marksmanship and physical resilience, which distinguished him among his peers. Drill instructors noted his precision with firearms, his steadiness under pressure, and his quick adaptation to military discipline. Despite his growing proficiency, York's inner conflict over the morality of killing persisted. He wrestled with reconciling his religious convictions with the obligations of military service. Discussions with officers and chaplains played a pivotal role in guiding him toward a personal compromise. He resolved that, if required, he could serve in combat while adhering to his principles, by directing force only toward the enemy actively engaged in combat operations. This nuanced approach allowed him to reconcile duty and conscience without abandoning his ethical framework. After completing training, York was deployed to Europe in June 1918, joining the 82nd Infantry Division. His division was engaged in intense operations along the Western Front, which by that time had become characterized by entrenched positions, extensive artillery bombardments, and widespread destruction. Upon arrival, York was exposed to the scale and intensity of modern warfare. He participated in operations leading up to the San Miel Offensive, an Allied effort to reduce a salient held by German forces. The operation involved coordinated infantry advances supported by artillery, and York experienced firsthand the logistical challenges, harsh conditions, and immediate dangers of combat. He witnessed the effects of artillery shells, barbed wire, and machine gun fire on both the landscape and the soldiers involved. The combination of prior experience, ethical reflection, and rigorous training prepared York for increasingly complex and dangerous missions. By the time his unit approached the Meuse-Argonne region, he had already accumulated operational knowledge and situational awareness uncommon among soldiers of similar experience. The path to World War I for Alvin C. York, therefore, was marked by the intersection of moral deliberation, practical skill development, and exposure to the realities of industrial-scale warfare, laying the groundwork for the extraordinary actions that would define his service and cement his place in military history. This period illustrates how York's early life, religious beliefs, and prior skills converged with military necessity, resulting in a soldier uniquely positioned to act decisively under extreme conditions. His journey from rural Tennessee to the battlefields of Europe represents not only a personal challenge, but also a preparatory phase for actions that would have significant consequences for his unit and for the broader course of the war.
In the fall of 1918, Alvin C. York found himself amidst one of the largest and most decisive operations of World War I, the Meuse-Argonne Offensive. This offensive, launched by the American Expeditionary Forces in coordination with French units, aimed to penetrate deeply into German-held territory along the Western Front. The terrain consisted of dense forests, steep ravines, and heavily fortified positions, all under constant artillery bombardment. The operation represented a critical effort to break the German lines and hasten the end of the war, requiring precise coordination among infantry, artillery, and support units. York's 82nd Infantry Division was assigned to advance through these hazardous positions, where every patrol faced the constant threat of machine gun fire, snipers, and artillery shells. On October 8, 1918, a small patrol of 17 American soldiers, including York, was tasked with capturing a German-held position near Châtel-Chehery. The objective appeared straightforward in planning, but the execution was fraught with peril. As the patrol advanced, German machine gun nests opened fire from concealed positions, cutting down men and leaving others severely wounded. The unit was pinned in place, unable to advance or retreat without risking further casualties. Command within the patrol quickly dissolved when the leaders were incapacitated, creating a situation of immediate tactical urgency. In this critical moment, York assumed command of the beleaguered patrol. Demonstrating extraordinary composure under extreme pressure, he assessed the enemy positions and systematically targeted the machine gun nests. Utilizing his well-honed marksmanship skills, refined through years of hunting and military training, York advanced deliberately, firing both rifle and pistol with precision. One by one, the enemy positions were neutralized, and German soldiers were either killed or compelled to surrender. York's actions were characterized by careful planning, patience, and adaptability, allowing him to maintain control of the situation despite the chaos surrounding him. By the conclusion of this engagement, York effectively led his patrol to capture a remarkable 132 German prisoners, an achievement that surpassed the expectations of his superiors and reflected both his individual skill and leadership. The patrol returned to American lines with minimal additional casualties, a result of York's ability to organize, motivate, and execute complex maneuvers under direct enemy fire. York's performance during the Meuse-Argonne offensive earned him immediate recognition. He was promoted to sergeant for his leadership and awarded the Medal of Honor, the United States' highest military decoration for valor. Additionally, his heroism was acknowledged internationally, receiving decorations from France, Italy, and Montenegro, further cementing his reputation as one of the most accomplished and disciplined soldiers of the conflict. The actions of October 8, 1918, exemplify a combination of skill, strategic thinking, and resilience under life-threatening conditions. York's ability to take decisive action, maintain composure, and achieve objectives against overwhelming odds transformed him from a relatively unknown soldier into a symbol of courage and effectiveness in combat. His conduct during the Meuse-Argonne offensive remains a case study in small unit leadership, tactical acumen, and the potential for individual impact within the broader scope of large-scale military operations.
Following the conclusion of World War I, Alvin C. York returned to the United States in May 1919, arriving in a nation eager to celebrate the contributions of its soldiers. His extraordinary actions at the Meuse-Argonne offensive had already been widely reported, and he was met with public recognition as a national war hero. Large crowds gathered at train stations and public events, acknowledging his leadership and bravery. Soon after his return, York married Gracie Williams, a local woman from his home region of Pall Mall, Tennessee. The marriage marked the beginning of a stable personal life after years defined by military service, moral deliberation, and combat. Despite the widespread attention and opportunities that his fame afforded, York made a deliberate choice to avoid commercial exploitation of his story. He consistently declined endorsement deals, speaking engagements, and other commercial offers that sought to capitalize on his wartime exploits. York maintained that his actions were a duty to his country and to his fellow soldiers, not a means for personal profit or celebrity. This refusal to commercialize his heroism reinforced his reputation for integrity and humility, distinguishing him from many public figures of the era. Instead of monetizing his fame, York focused on the long-term benefit of his community. Using the proceeds from accounts of his military service, he helped establish the York Agricultural Institute, which later became the Alvin C. York Institute. The school provided educational opportunities for rural youth in Tennessee, offering courses in agriculture, mechanics, and general education. York's commitment to education reflected a desire to improve the prospects of future generations, ensuring that his impact extended beyond the battlefield. He was involved in the administration and development of the institute, advocating for practical skills and academic learning tailored to the needs of the rural community. In his later years, York experienced a significant decline in health. In 1954, he suffered a cerebral hemorrhage that left him partially disabled. Despite the physical limitations imposed by this condition, he continued to remain active in community affairs to the extent possible, emphasizing mentorship and local engagement. York passed away on September 2, 1964, in Nashville, Tennessee, concluding a life that spanned rural hardship, moral struggle, military heroism, and civic contribution. York's enduring legacy is defined by multiple dimensions. He is remembered not only as a Medal of Honor recipient and decorated soldier, but also as a symbol of humility, faith, and service. His choices after the war, particularly his commitment to education and refusal to commercialize his heroism, demonstrate a deliberate focus on long-term societal benefit over personal gain. Multiple institutions, including the Alvin C. York Institute, and historical sites, such as the Sergeant Alvin C. York State Historic Park in Tennessee, preserve his memory and continue to educate the public about his life and values. His story remains an example of how courage, ethical integrity, and dedication to community can combine to create a legacy that transcends individual accomplishment, providing lessons for both historical study and contemporary reflection. Through his post-war actions, York extended the influence of his wartime heroism into a framework of civic responsibility, ensuring that his contributions would be measured not only by battlefield success, but also by meaningful societal impact.